On June 10th of 1978, Randy and I got married, and we moved to Portland, Oregon, a little town out of Portland, Oregon called Logan, Oregon. And Randy was working at a lumber mill in Boring, Oregon. And I was a dental assistant, but I decided that I didn't really want to go to work for the first year and work a lot. So I was working for a farmer that went to our church, and he had a lot of potato fields. And so I was working, bringing in the potato harvest and sorting potatoes. And one day I was working, and Randy got off his job because his mill froze down. So he came to where I was sorting potatoes, and the man that owned the farm, he asked him if he would take a load of potatoes into Bluebell Potato Chip Factory, which was in the city of Portland. So we got in the big truck and we took our load of potatoes in, and on the way back the truck was really kind of light and it was slick out and icy that day. And on the way back, this lady kind of stopped in front of us abruptly, and Randy had to put on the brakes, and we veered off to the left over a median. And so we flew up. It was so old, the truck was old and didn't have any seat belts, and I can just remember flying up and hitting my head on the ceiling, and that was the last I remember. Except I woke up on the ground outside the truck with my face down, and I just remember being in a pool of blood. And Randy's the one, I was unconscious, but Randy remembers what happened.
Well, when the truck went across the median and hit the bank, we both went out the car doors, and Shelley went out and landed up behind the rear tire on the right side, and I went out obviously on the driver's side. I remember running around and not being able to find her right away, but the second time around the truck I found her under the rear wheels of the truck. And then the ambulance came and they took her to the hospital. And when we first went to the emergency, I didn't really realize the intent and the extent of the accident. And so when they got there and they started taking her clothes off, the nurse started at her feet like this with a pin and started poking like this. And she didn't do anything, and she moved down her body like this, and when she got up here and hit her right here, this is where she hollered. And then I realized, wow, we're really got something going here. This is a whole new ballgame. And then when they determined that it was that extensive, they decided to take her to Emmanuel Hospital, which was supposed to be the better hospital for spinal cord injuries. So they were there, and that evening the doctor told me this. He said, we're going to know in 48 hours the extent of the injury. Either she's going to be bedridden the rest of her life or on a respirator the rest of her life. And we'll know within the next 48 hours. So that's what I went home to the first evening. And that was quite an evening to try and sort through that stuff.
Think that we were going to have any children. I really wanted to have children, but so I ended up just getting pregnant, and so along came Caleb, and he was born on April 27th of 1989. And as I thought about having children, I thought about how I could do it, so I had a pouch that I had kind of wrapped around my chair. And I just, when he was just newly born, I just put a pillow in there and just tucked him in there, and I just rolled him all around, and I had him in this nice little pouch. And I had a friend that had muscular dystrophy, and she had a baby, so she gave me her crib side that her husband made, and it was made of plexiglass, and it opened and closed on the side of the crib like this, so I could put Caleb in bed and close the doors. And so that made it a lot easier for me because I couldn't get over the top of the crib. At that time I didn't have a wheelchair that went up and down. And so that was really, really helpful. And my dad made a changing table for me to Velcro him on so I could change his diaper, and I had a lot of support and help, and I had a great husband. there all the time and helped me when he got home from work. And so it was with God's help and people's help, I was able to take care of Caleb. And that was really a handful. When I woke up that night in the hospital, I realized that I had an injury, a neck injury, a spinal cord injury at the C6-7 level. And you have 8 cervical vertebrae in your neck, and I broke mine between the 6th and the 7th vertebrae. And so I was paralyzed from here down, which I have my biceps and I have most of my triceps. And I also broke my clavicle and I broke my scapula in a couple places, and I cut my ear pretty severely on this side, and that's where all the blood was coming from when I woke up at the scene of the accident. And so that was really the extent of my injuries. When I woke up, I had ice tongs in my head that had like 15 or 20 pounds, and down the back of the bed it was pulling on my head, so I had to lay flat with those ice tongs in for several weeks. And then after that they gave me a halo brace that went around my head, and they screwed it into my skull in 4 places. And when they screwed it in, they have to do it when you're awake. I mean, they give you medicine, you know, so if you're not that aware, but I can remember the sound of the drills and them just drilling in my head, and it was the most excruciating thing I've ever done. So when I go to the dentist, they just move the chair out of the way and just use this chair. So this button reclines, and then this top one pulls me back, so I can get in, you know, way down, and it's good for sun tanning also.